Hi, uh, welcome again, and we want to now talk about the events that took place last week, starting from the first to last. Let's start with Turkey. There was a announcement from state about the economic data in 2018. According to those data, we have seen that Turkey has grown by 2.6% on year 2018. The industrial increase is to 5.6. Now, considering the overall and the industrial growth, we can conclude that the the manufacturing industry has shrunk compared to last year's performance. In 2017, the GDP was 7.6%. Now, if you compare the 2018 and 2017 GDP, it's a major reduction, let's say, in the GDP. Now, why it's important? Because in March 2019, there will be a municipality election in Turkey. We are going to see all this economical burden, how it affects the people and people's ideas about political parties in these polls. We will report you accordingly by end of March what will be the results and how it will affect the perception of Turkish people. Now, once we say Turkey, I have to indicate that this is Turkey, and the Turkey's policymakers have been discussing about the elections, the economic positions, situations, or data indicators in Turkey for the last couple of months. But we have been seeing a lot of developments worldwide, and it's a shame to mention it, but our policy, because I'm a Turkish, our policymakers fail to really address the big issues that needs to be told. Since we cannot address them and we cannot take necessary actions, unfortunately Turkey's economic indications and strategic interests will be less and less by time. Now, why I'm saying that? Because France is an example for me. Now, Macron took his plane, flew from Paris to Kenya, Djibouti, Eritrea, and he sat with the leaders over there and made deals and ensured that the French interest in the Horn of Africa will take place some decades. And the last agreement he has done with Kenya already cost 3.2 billion infrastructure investment that will give a boost to French economy for sure. That's important for the Turkish policymakers to remember that you are doing something wrong, as usual. Now, once we said something usual and something mistake again, now US and Iran. President Trump decided to put some more pressure on Iran oil production. As of today, Iran is allowed to sell 1.25 million barrels per day oil. However, US decides to reduce this to some considerable amounts like 750 or 800,000 barrels per day. And the countries Iran is going to be allowed to deal with these kind of oil will be India and China in future. Now, why it is important? Because I would like to give you an example. If you are a hunter and if you go to a forest and if you are going to push your hunt to a corner, the animal is going to take two actions. Either it's going to attack you or it's going to wait for the unavailable end. Now, I don't think so. I don't think that Iran is going to wait for the end. And now, economy is very bad. People are already not happy with the economy and the policy leaders. Students are really not happy for their future. They have great concerns. Unemployment rates are high. Healthcare is fairly poor, and corruption is too high. Considering this, if United States considers to set up some kind of resilience in Iran, they might achieve this. However, Iran is not going to just sit and wait for their end. They will take actions. Since I am a Turk and I am living also, in Turkey, let's say, this is important for Turkey to remember that Iran is going to be now economically hurt, and their pride will be hurt. So they will take a lot of actions which is going to affect the Middle East. We will see, and we will report you according to how Iran is going to respond to this. Now, China and US. This is important for everybody to understand how US is strong. As usual, I have been trying to imply and try to say that the trade war between China and US, both countries have the room and they have the ability and time to wait, but US has more compared to China. Now, what's the indicator for this now? Now, after the meeting, the last meeting, both presidents took place, they have decided to meet in future. Now, China is pushing or was pushing this to take place in March, or by end of March. But according to reports that we are receiving, both countries now acknowledge that it will not take place before the end of April, meaning either in May or June, earliest. And China also tried to make this meeting not a regular meeting, but a state visit. So this gives us a clue that China's economic hurt, which I have already mentioned that the Chinese economic slowdown is enormous and will affect the global market, is already a great concern to Chinese policy leaders. And now we can also see that Chinese policy leaders or decision makers try to make this visit important as it can. What we see that US leadership understands this and try to take some advantage by delaying it at the moment. We will see how this is going to end, but now we can see that US has more power on the table. So we will see how it's going to affect the global market in future. Poland and US. Now I am going to mention you two data about this. At first, the first data. Now, the first data is about the defense spending of the NATO alliances. Now, US or President Trump has been persuading the EU states to spend more to NATO alliances. Now, up until now, Germany have in 2019 acknowledged to spend 1.20 or 23%, which accumulates like 2.8 billion. Greece and Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, and UK barely meet with 2% target, and others are almost 1.5. Now, this is going to make US policy makers enormously nervous, because Trump has been indicating that the NATO alliances do not do their burden, and it gives a hard time in terms of economy to US. And now we see US is now taking some actions about it. So what does it mean? If you are not going to take your interest and if you are not going to empower the NATO alliances, I am going to empower my own interest. And now US has offered Poland to keep a permanent troop in Warsaw or in Poland. Now, what does it mean? Now, US says, okay, NATO, if you're not going to be with me, I will just take my own interest, because still US needs EU. Now, in 2018, Warsaw offered 2 billion for this kind of settlement per year. I don't know how much they will agree with, but we only consider that they are going to agree with some amount of people or soldiers on the ground, attached with some billions as a bill per year to be paid by Warsaw. That's for sure. Russia is not going to be happy with this. We have seen already that Russia has launched a troop in Kaliningrad S-400 to protect their own land. We will see how this is going to end, but it's very important to remember. Now, the other issue with this US and Russia is the INF agreement, the intermediate range nuclear forces treaty. Now, you know that they both said, okay, we will not honor an extension for this. Although the agreement has already ended, there is an official time interval to extend this by August. Now, what does it mean? US has already declared that they are going to develop some missiles which they cannot develop under this treaty. This is, I don't know whether it is a kind of a negotiation tactic between the US policy makers and the army, but considering the enormous budget that they have declared for 2019 under the military budget, our perception is that it is for both. It might be including also the negotiations, but US has determined to improve their technology. That's for sure. We will see how it's going to end up, and we will report you accordingly. Now, one of the issue again about the Chinese slowdown is about the industrial output has grew slowest in the last 17 years during the first 2 months of 2019. The unemployment rate has already risen. In December it was around 4.9%, now it's 5.3%. And but everything is not as bad as it is, because Chinese government is stipulating an economic recovery or heating up, let's say the cash in the market. They inject a lot of currency. The investment in the householding and infrastructure has grew and now is holding the economy. We will see how this will turn up in future, but we have seen this before. It will increase maybe the inflations and other things, because Chinese economy is heavily depending on the industrial outcome because of their export to other countries. Now, Algeria. I'm going to mention Algeria in depth in this week, hopefully. But there's a new Prime Minister, Noureddin Bedoui, and the Deputy Prime Minister, Ramtane Lamamra, have said that they want to complete the first transnational phase within a year, and they will pursue North American nations' political opposition a meeting. Now, this is very important in my idea. They want to, or the Algeria says wants to encounter a meeting with the oppositions, because the universities are on the street. They are demonstrating their dislikes and unpleasance at the street. We think that Algeria is on the edge of a transnational or a transition. We will see how this will end up, to be honest. But it's our perception that there will be a change in Algeria's elite's perception and democracy and all the economic positions in future. We will mention that. The last event of the week was 2 missiles were launched from Palestinian to Israel. Now, one of them has been taken down by the Iron Dome missile system. The other was on the ground. It's just an empty ground. But what it took our surprise is Israel didn't launch a military strike to Palestinian nobody knows if it is behind this is Hamas or not. But if Israel was sure about this, we believe they would have already launched a military strike. So since they haven't, we only think that this is not these intentions of Israel is not to increase the tension between Israel and Palestinian, even before, let's say, the elections that will take place in April, which is a good sign, to be honest. We will see how this is going to end up in future, and we will report you accordingly. For listening me this week, I would like to thank you all, and I wish a very happy week ahead. Thank you for watching. Keep with us.